Hey guys, so I finished Baldur's Gate 3 a couple of weeks ago, and if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you might have already seen my non-spoiler BG3 video where I just shared my overall thoughts and went over some minor points of feedback. Well, today I'm going to be sharing my full experience, so I'm going to be talking about very specific parts of the game, things like companions, their personal quests, romances, and the endings. So naturally, there will be major spoilers ahead. If you haven't finished the game yet and don't want to get spoiled, it's probably best to click off the video now and hopefully come back when you finish the game yourself. But for those of you that are still here, welcome! Grab yourself a drink and let me tell you about my full experience with Baldur's Gate 3. So like my non-spoiler video, I'll once again start off by giving you an idea of what kind of playthrough I did. So I played the game on a PC as a custom character. I played on balance mode without any mods. I did a mostly good playthrough, recruited all of the possible companions apart from Minthara, did most of their personal quest, completed a romance with one of the characters, and I did as much of the content as I could. Again, I'm going to try to keep this video as structured as possible, but I'll go into detail about things much more this time. And if there's any specific topic you want to hear my thoughts on, there will be chapter markers below, as always. And with that, let's get into my actual thoughts. Character creator. I'll keep this rather brief, because I talked about this in detail in my non-spoiler video, but I think the character creator is great with plenty of options to customize our character. I only wish we'd have a bit more options to customize parts of our face, and a few more body type options would be nice too. Like Divinity Original Sin 2, the origin characters that we can play instead of a custom character add another perspective to the story. While I haven't played as one myself, it's definitely something I want to do on a future run. In addition to the regular origin characters, there is the Dark Urge. And the Dark Urge is interesting because it's basically a middle ground between a custom character and an origin character. The Dark Urge is fully customizable, race, class, appearance and everything. So pretty similar to a custom character, right? Well, what it has in common with an origin character though, is that it has a set background. When you start your journey in Baldur's Gate 3, you have no idea what that background is yet, and you will discover more about it as you play through the game. Again, I played as a custom character, so while I didn't experience it myself, I heard it does a pretty good job at giving you your own part in the story. While a custom character is more of a blank slate, someone for the player to project themselves onto or make them into whatever they want them to be, the Dark Urge is a little bit more defined. It still allows you to roleplay your character how you want them and give them a personality, but their defined background gives them a little more meaning and can make you feel like you're really part of the story. It also has a very cool relation to the previous games, but I'll talk about that some other time in another video once I've played a full playthrough as a Dark Urge myself. Gameplay. I said it in my non-spoiler video and I'll say it again. This game just feels good to play. You have a lot of freedom in how and where you want to explore, and there are multiple ways of solving problems, encouraging you to think outside of the box. Think lockpicking a chest versus just smashing it to bits, stacking a bunch of crates on top of each other so you can climb on top of them and reach a place you otherwise couldn't, or shooting an unstable statue so it falls and crushes an annoying pack of goblins. Another fun example is the rotating statues in the Githyanki Crash, near the entrance that leads to the Blood of the Thunder. The statues both need to rotate a certain way, but one of them always gets stuck. There are hints that tell you throwing grease on it will help, but I had Karlach give it a good whack. And to my surprise, this actually worked. The game uses a point-and-click system to walk, and while I personally prefer WASD, I'm used to it now, and it feels good to use. The camera is easy to control and can be zoomed in to create more of a third-person view. Unfortunately, we cannot rotate the camera up or down, which can be a little bit annoying when we're in a small space or a place with a lot of high buildings. But a few people in the comments on my last video mentioned that there's a mod that addresses this, as well as a mod for WASD movement, so thank you guys for mentioning that. It feels good to cast spells and use abilities, but it looks good too. The animations for it are very smooth and the spell effects look beautiful. Spells that require a vocal component have mostly unique spell chants for every voice of the custom character and each of the origin characters. And that's just a small detail, but I love it. The random nature of the dice rolls might not be everyone's cup of tea, but to me, it made the game all the more engaging. Moments that are otherwise not very noteworthy are suddenly a lot more interesting now that a dice roll is involved. While failing a dice roll might not give me the result I wanted initially, I never felt like I was being punished for failing, and the consequences were always entertaining nonetheless. It also adds to the replayability. Succeeding a dice roll might give you something that you wouldn't have seen if you had failed, but it works the other way around too. And if there's an important roll you just really don't want to fail, you can always use inspiration points to re-roll the dice and hopefully get a better result. Speaking of inspiration points, don't be afraid to use them, really, especially in the first 2 acts. You can only have a maximum of 4 at a time, but if you do side quests and explore enough, the game gives you plenty. I was always very careful with them on my playthrough and always made sure I had at least 2, but I really could have used them a lot more. It was not a problem at all. Combat is incredibly fun. The encounters in this game aren't always super straightforward, and challenge you to pre-plan and think outside of the box a little bit. There are many examples I could name, but the encounters that I enjoyed specifically were the incredibly epic battle with Raphael and the second encounter with the Hag in Act 3. With Raphael, well, first of all, he has his own Disney villain song and it fucking slaps. Also look, he has 666 health. That's funny. And second of all, the main trick in this fight is to get rid of the 4 soul pillars from which he draws power. And the Hag's fight revolves around dealing with the mushroom so that you can kill the Hag properly, as well as having her throw up the child and dealing with the masked servants, which can be quite a challenge if you want to save both the child and the servants. Apart from attacking your enemies directly, you can also use the environment to your advantage. Taking the high ground will often help you out, and if your enemies are standing under a chandelier, you can shoot it down so that it'll fall down on top of them. Or if they are standing near a barrel of smoke powder, you can shoot the barrel with fire, making it explode. The game does a great job of teaching you this early on, as you can find opportunities to do this all the way back on the Nautiloid ship. The only downside of the combat, I would say, is that it can take a pretty long time to finish a battle. While I love combat in this game, I can't say I wasn't frustrated at times when I had spent ages on an encounter only to die in the last minute. While I tried to do most encounters completely from the start after I lost, rethinking my strategy, I ended up quick saving mid-fight for some of the encounters that I struggle with a lot. Some of the encounters have a lot of enemies, and more often than not, these enemies all take their own turn one by one. And depending on the initiative order, you might have to do a lot of waiting. There are a few encounters where some of the enemies are grouped together and all take their turn at the same time, something Larian called Swarm AI, I believe, but this didn't happen as much as I had expected. Something I also pointed out in my non-spoiler video is that enemies sometimes take a long time to take their action. This wasn't as much of an issue in Act 1, but I definitely saw this more in Act 2 and 3. Enemies would sometimes just stand there and do nothing for 5 to 10 seconds. And when this happens a few times in a row, you'll just be sitting there, staring at your screen, waiting for them to do something. Now this might be an issue on my end because I'm not running the game on an SSD, so if that's the case, that's totally on me. But definitely let me know what your experience has been with this, especially if you are running your game on an SSD. Overall though, I enjoy the combat in this game a lot, and I always find myself looking forward to the next encounter. The world and side quests. Walking around in this game truly feels like an adventure. Wherever you go, there's always a new character to meet or a new secret to discover. If you have companions with you, they will occasionally have banter with each other, which is entertaining to listen to and may give you some insight on their personality and what they think of each other. One of my favorite things in this game is exploring, because there are just so many things to find. Whether that's an item, a new piece of lore, or the entrance to a secret hideout, exploring thoroughly always feels very rewarding. The environmental storytelling in this game is great. There are so many lore books, notes, and journals you can find all over the world that tell you something about a certain character or give hints of what might have transpired in the area. The ambience and overall atmosphere in this game are fantastic. They do a great job at setting the tone, and I really felt that. The dreadful and eerie music in the Shadow-Cursed lands really makes you feel like all hope is lost. And when you enter the Last Light Inn, the mood is a little lighter. There are people all around, the music sounds a little happier, and there's constant chatter everywhere. Now in my playthrough, I fucked up. And when Isabel was taken, almost everyone in the inn turned into Shadow-Cursed zombies, of course, because there was no one to keep up the barrier, which resulted into me having to kill everyone. And after that happens, that dreadful atmosphere is even more prominent when you're left with nothing but silence and darkness and dead bodies everywhere. The side quests in this game are also great. All of them give you an interesting interaction and tell an engaging story. Even the ones that don't tie into the main narrative are compelling and have their own place in the world. And all of this really makes the world feel alive and lived in, and makes me feel the consequences of my actions even more. Larian's great attention to detail also clearly shows. There are many examples I could name, but the thing I wanted to highlight here are the subtle animations in the body language of the characters and the facial expressions. I already talked about this briefly in my non-spoiler video, but because it was a non-spoiler video, I couldn't really give you any good examples, so that's why I'm bringing it up again. I was actually really impressed by how good the facial animations look in this game. You can read a character's emotion really well when you're looking at their face. And something I especially like is that even when the main character is in a conversation, your companions still react to what is happening, even if they don't say anything. One of the two examples I couldn't talk about last time is a scene where you meet the monster hunter in the Hag Swamp in Act 1. If you talk to the monster hunter and ask him who or what he's hunting for, he will at some point mention Astarion by name. And I just love the looks that are being exchanged by Astarion and the player character here. Like at first Astarion's being all smug talking to this guy here, and then he's like, oh fuck, he's looking for me. Okay, shit, don't panic. Like you can really see the panic on his face here. The second example is one of my favorite reactions from Shadowheart, and it's when you talk to Isabel in the Last Light Inn in Act 2, and she casts her Solune protection spell on you. And Shadowheart just has this very disgusted look on her face, like, ugh, Solunite magic, this shit's gross. And I don't know why, but that was just so funny to me. And there are many moments like these where companions have subtle reactions to what is happening, and I love that. I was, for the most part, very happy with the reactivity of the game. There's plenty of reactivity to race, class, and even subclass from other characters and during conversations. I know the Dark Urge gets quite a lot of unique interactions and cutscenes, and companions will often chime in on conversations and react to the things that happen to other companions and decisions you make. You even get an option to ask your romance companion for a kiss whenever you speak with them, and I know that's something a lot of people wanted. However, I said I was very happy with it for the most part. So, for the majority of the game, the special interactions and banter and reactions from companions are plentiful. When you reach Act 3, however, it starts lacking a little bit. There aren't as many times where companions chime in during conversations, and I felt like there weren't as many special cutscenes in camp. I also felt like companions don't really get a lot of new dialogue apart from stuff related to their personal quests. I was expecting a little more dialogue and reactions from them after completing main events or doing certain things in the city. I also barely got any banter while walking around in the city. Not sure if that's because I had exhausted all of it with the characters in my main party, or if it just didn't trigger. Having said that though, things that we do get in Act 3 are still very good. And I think we've just been spoiled by the amount of content we get in the first two acts, and I wish there was just a little bit more of it in Act 3. Story. I'm not going to get too deep into the story of Baldur's Gate 3 because this video is already going to be quite long, but the gist of it is that we, as well as a whole bunch of other people, have been infected with a Mind Flayer tadpole. Those infected are being controlled by an elder brain calling itself the Absolute, and carry out its orders. The only reason we aren't affected by this is because we're being protected by a mysterious rogue Mind Flayer who calls himself the Emperor. We eventually get introduced to Ketheric, Orin, and Gortash, the Chosen of the Dead Three, who are keeping the Elder Brain under their control using a powerful artifact called the Crown of Karsus and 3 Netherstones. From then on, our goal becomes taking the Netherstones from the Chosen Three and using it to either take control of the Netherbrain ourselves or destroy it for good. And this is a very simplified version of the plot, but it should paint a good picture at least. I enjoyed the story, but more so, I enjoyed the freedom and autonomy the game gives us. There may be an ultimate end goal, but there are many different paths that lead to that goal, and it's up to us to decide which path we take, who we take with us, and what kind of person we want to be at the end of it all. I like that we start out as a random nobody, put into the situation by chance rather than fate. We aren't destined to be a hero. I mean, yeah, I guess we were chosen by the Emperor, but that doesn't mean we have to listen to him. You can totally refuse to use the tadpole's power and save the world, or you can absolutely abuse the fuck out of the tadpole's power and become the Absolute yourself. Transformation is a big theme in Baldur's Gate 3. Not only in terms of the whole Mind Flayer theme and the physical transformation that you go through when you use a special tadpole and allow yourself to become Illithid, but also in terms of the characters. And I like how this is especially true for the origin characters. When the game starts, they are all at certain points in their lives. Lae'zel is trying to find a way to impress her queen, Karlach just escaped literal hell, and Will is hunting devilish creatures for his patron. They all have their own goals and morals, and depending on whether you encourage or challenge their ways, they can go through significant changes and become very different people at the end of the game, for better or for worse. The only thing in the story that didn't make a lot of sense to me was how quick the Emperor was to join the Absolute side when I wanted to free Orpheus. Like, you've put in so much effort to fight back against the Absolute at this point, and now you're just gonna turn around and throw it all away? Okay. I get why he's afraid of Orpheus with him being a mind flayer and all, but like, there was no reason for him to just fuck off and side with the Absolute apart from just doing it out of spite, I guess? He could have at least given it a chance. I never used any of the tadpoles, yes, but I never completely distrusted the Emperor either. And I was nice to him overall, so it would have been nice to have an option to persuade him at least. Like, make it a very tough role or something. Overall, I'm quite happy with how the story plays out, and it did a good job of keeping me interested. I was always excited to find out what would come next. I liked how some of the bigger plot points later on in the game are mentioned or hinted at as early as Act 1, like the Night Song. I like the mystery of the Guardian before you find out he's the Emperor, and I very much enjoyed the horror-esque vibes in Act 2, and the hopeful transition to Act 3 as you're about to head into Baldur's Gate. I loved how intimidating Ketheric is the first time you meet him in Moonrise, like, the scene where he gets the axe thrown at him and he just doesn't give a fuck, and he's like, try again. Like, damn. I was a little intimidated. I also loved slowly discovering more about him as I explored the Shadowcurse lands, and I think his backstory is the reason he's my favorite antagonist out of the main three. The way you are able to almost redeem him in the end shows us that he wasn't always the cold-hearted man that he is today. All this started out of love for his daughter, and the grief from losing her. Sadly, I didn't get to talk to Isabel about it all, cause of course she was taken away in my playthrough, but next time I definitely want to see what she says about him. Gortash was alright. He wasn't as intimidating as I expected him to be, and I wish we saw a little more of him as well as Orin. Orin was fun though, because she's just batshit crazy, and I like how she kept coming back, shapeshifted as a reporter or a dryad to try and get information out of us and find out our plans and our weaknesses. Alright, time for my favorite topic and probably the longest section in this video, companions. So the companions in Baldur's Gate 3, both Origin and non-Origin, are all great. While I enjoyed some more than others, they are all fun characters with each their own distinctive personality. This, combined with the history each of them have in the world, and the amazing work the voice actors did to bring these characters to life, makes them feel like real people. They all have their own opinions on how to handle the situation we're in and what we should do about it. If you do something they disagree with, they'll let you know, and if you do something to really piss them off, they might even leave or try to kill you. Though disagreeing with them is not always a bad thing. In fact, sometimes going against what they want could even be better for them in the long run, and that doesn't mean your relationship is ruined, if done in a respectful way. And I like that about the companions in this game, because it makes sense. It works like that in real life too. You can disagree with someone and have different views on things, but that doesn't mean you can't be friends. But that does require trust, and trust is built up over time. Some of them don't seem like the nicest people when you first meet them, but keep in mind, at the start of our journey, we are all strangers who likely wouldn't even have met if it weren't for the tadpole. They don't know who you are. For all they know, you might be a vicious killer. And hey, in the case of an embracing dark urge, they might even be right. While they're all willing to work together to find a healer, the ultimate goal for most of them is to get rid of the tadpole and just move on with their lives. But as we journey together and spend time with them, we may gain their trust, develop friendships, and maybe even fall in love. It might take a while before our companions trust us enough to open up, but once they do, they'll share things about their past, ask for help, and look to us for guidance. The game even allows us to let them make their own decisions at certain points in their personal quests. Whereas usually in other games, you can tell your companions to do one thing or the other, but there is never an option like in Baldur's Gate 3 where you can just say, this is your decision to make. It's up to you. And I love that we can do that in this game. With enough trust, most might even follow us down paths that they probably wouldn't have followed otherwise, whether that's a path of righteousness or a much darker one. I don't think any of the companions are inherently evil, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think even Minthara isn't evil. Not truly, judging by the things I've heard about her. I'd have to do a playthrough with her to find out for sure, but honestly, I think most of them are the way they are because of things they had to go through or the environment that they were raised in. Like Lae'zel. I didn't like Lae'zel very much at the start, but learning about Githyanki and their culture, I started to appreciate her character more. She's tough because she has to be, because otherwise she wouldn't have lived very long in Githyanki society. She might seem ruthless, but give her time and you'll see a completely different side of her. As for some of the other companions, well, life can be shitty, and sometimes shitty situations make you do shitty things. It doesn't make it right, but that is what happens. Heck, even other characters like Gortash and Cazador. As a child, Gortash was sold by his parents to an unknown warlock so that they could pay off their debts. As an adult, Gortash betrays Karlach by selling her off to Zariel. As a vampire spawn, Cazador had a fucked up master that tortured him for ages, had him suffer 11 years of impalement simply because he failed. As a true vampire, Cazador tortures Astarion for nearly 2 centuries. And Astarion, well, if he ascends, he is very likely to repeat the cycle. The game gives us little to no information on who Astarion was before he became a vampire spawn. As a side note, I totally wish we had an option to ask him about that. But as a spawn, the torture Cazador inflicted on him left him scarred, physically but also very much mentally. His behavior and attitude is the result of the 200 years of torment that he went through. He thinks everyone is only out for themselves. He views himself as a tool to be used, and he wants freedom more than anything. He thinks the only way to achieve that is to be the most powerful person in the world, because in his mind, power is freedom, because that's all he's known for 200 years. One of my favorite moments in his character arc is when you find all of his victims in Cazador's dungeon. All this time, he thought Cazador had used them to feed on them, so he thought they were dead. But when he finds all of them quote-unquote alive as vampire spawn, he is genuinely horrified. He is suddenly faced with the consequences of his actions, and even though he was under Cazador's influence, he truly feels guilty as he realizes what he did to these people.
All these people were ruined because of me.
This moment is so key to his character development, and depending on what kind of character you played and how you interacted with him and if you encourage his power-hungry behavior or not, this can really be a turning point for him. If you succeed the insight check on him right before killing Cazador, it's revealed that he is scared, but that all the blood in the room and the potential power of the ritual are intoxicating him. If you manage to persuade him not to do the ritual, he even admits that he wasn't himself in that moment. And he thanks you for helping him break the cycle, and I think that's what his character arc is really about. I think it's about breaking the cycle of abuse, and the character development that he goes through if you do not go through with the ritual is just beautiful. Shadowheart's personal arc was another highlight for me. Her story is such an emotional one. Being stripped of her memories and raised by Sharns from a young age, all she's ever done most of her life is trying her best to serve Shar. All the pain she went through, all the sacrifices she made, it was all to appease the Lady of Loss and be blessed with her embrace. Having no idea that, all this time, her parents were not only alive but also devoted Selûnites, meaning that Shadowheart is actually a Selûnite herself, and the Sharns only captured her and turned her into a Shar worshipper to spite Selûne. In my playthrough, I had her free the Night Song, and when it came to the choice with her parents, I had her make her own decision, because I felt like that was so important to her character arc. Her whole life she's been devoted to Shar without even thinking of what she wanted. After freeing the Night Song, she finally gets a chance to be her own person again. In my playthrough, Shadowheart chose to let her parents go and be free of Shar's grip. And the long rest scene you get afterwards is one of the most emotional moments in the game. All her life, she was dedicated to the Lady of Loss, thinking she was an orphan for most of her life. But now, learning that her parents were actually alive this whole time, only to lose them again, for the first time in her life, she feels true loss. And if that wasn't emotional enough, there was one line in particular that really did it for me.
I remember. But they can't comfort me. They can't give me advice. They can't tell me what I was like as a little girl.
This line is just so real. If you've ever lost somebody, you know exactly what this feels like. The relatability of it, and her voice actor doing such a good job of conveying the extreme grief Shadowheart is feeling in that moment, made this such a beautiful scene, and it's straight up one of my favorite moments in the game. There are so many more memorable moments like these, and I could talk about them for hours, but I'll save all of that for my character deep dives on them in the future. For now, I'll summarize my overall thoughts on the rest of the companions before moving on to the next section of this video. So my main party throughout my playthrough was Astarion, Shadowheart, and Karlach. I love Karlach's personality. She is the sweetest and most wholesome character in the entire game. And despite all the shit she's been through, she manages to stay positive and enjoy the good moments in life where she can. Her story arc is a very tragic one, especially with there being no way to fix her engine. All she wants to do is live a simple, happy life in a city, but her only two choices in the end are going back to Avernus, the place where she was being forced to fight against her will for 10 years, or burning up and dying. I loved all my interactions with Karlach, but there are very few of them when I played. Now that patch 2 added more interactions with her regarding her infernal engine, I'm looking forward to doing a new playthrough and seeing those new scenes. I liked Gil. I liked his whole struggle with trying to win back Mistra's favor and then being asked to blow himself up, and actually being able to let him do it. I liked Will and being able to see the consequences of what happens if you go against Mizora. Loved all the interactions with Mizora, by the way. She's funny as hell. Ha. Hell. Get it. She's a Cambion. From hell. Minsk and Jaheira were great. Both of their voice actors did such a good job, and they sounded almost exactly the same as in the previous games. I love seeing how much Jaheira has matured as a character, and hearing her reference her adventures with the ball spawn. Sadly, I somehow missed a part of her quest when you go to her house and meet her adopted children, so that's something I'm definitely going to do in my next playthrough. Minsk and Boo were both really fun characters to interact with. I only wish we'd have been able to recruit them sooner, because I definitely feel like I wasn't able to spend enough time with them. Halsin was probably the weakest out of all the companions, in my opinion. I liked him, but I feel like there could have been a bit more depth to him. After his quest in Act 2, he was just kinda there. Maybe there's more to him in the romance, but for me, I never really got any more interesting interactions with him, and he didn't really get any new dialogue. Now it probably didn't help that I didn't take him with me much, but it just didn't really interest me for some reason. The music. Okay, I gotta talk about the music for a second. I love the music in this game. I just love it. I can't tell you why, because I don't know shit about music. All I know is that the music in this game makes me feel something. Whether it's setting the tone for a certain scene or an epic soundtrack during combat. It just works. My only complaint about the music is the fact that in some cutscenes, there wasn't any. I can't remember the exact scenes, but I remember a few times where I was watching a cutscene and I was just sitting here thinking, why is it so quiet? I love the scene, but I'm really missing some music here. So I don't know if those scenes were supposed to be without music or if they were bugged or what, but that just shows how much the music adds for me. There's also one song I want to highlight, and that is a soundtrack called I Want to Live. Apart from me just loving that song a lot, I think it fits so well in the narrative of Baldur's Gate 3. If you listen to the lyrics, there are so many parts of it that can relate to so many of the characters. A custom character depending on how you play them, but also a resisting dark urge, as well as the other Origin characters. Hell, both Astarion and Karlach literally say it at some point.
Let's just go. This place reeks of death, and I want to feel alive again.
I wanted to live in my city with my friends.
After fighting in a blood war for 10 years against her will, all Karlach wants to do is return to her old life in Baldur's Gate, surrounded by her friends, and just live. The part, "These ain't my sins, I broke my chains," could refer to both Astarion and Shadowheart's character arcs. Astarion did horrible things under Cazador's influence, and now that he broke his chains, he just wants to live his own life again. Shadowheart spends most of her life being manipulated by Shar and doing things in her name. Her freeing the Night Song, I think, is the start of her breaking her chains from Shar and learning how to live her own life. And Will, doing things for Mizora because they are bound by their contract, and him wanting to break those chains. Even if the lyrics don't fit every Origin character perfectly, I think it fits the overall theme of the game and companions very well. And I just wanted to talk about that for a little bit. The ending. Alright, I've stalled long enough. It's time to talk about the ending. Yeah, I am not gonna lie, it was a little underwhelming. Look, the ending isn't bad, far from it in fact. It's just, with everything the game is and what it has given us, all the characters we meet, all the choices we make, all the reactivity, the companions, the world building, every single ingredient for the perfect package is there. All we need is just a nice, big, pretty bow to wrap things up. And that's what we're missing. Without it, it feels like we shouldn't be quite done yet. We're missing that bit of closure that a lot of us were hoping to get at the end. Right now, we have no idea what half of the companions are doing. For me, Lae'zel left to go with her own people and lead the fight against Vlaakith. Will went with Karlach to Avernus, and Gil expressed interest in staying with the party after he retrieves the crown of Karsus and gives it to Mistra. And I only know Astarion is fine because I got the romance scene with him afterwards. But if you don't romance him, he just runs off when he starts burning in the sun, and you have no idea what happened to him afterwards. He might as well be dead. Shadowheart, no clue what she's up to. We became really close friends throughout our journey, and yet all I got from her was one line about Astarion burning and nothing else. Halsin didn't say anything at all, and I didn't get much from Minsk and Jaheira either. And what about the state of the world? How have my choices affected it? How are things going in the Grove if you sided with Halsin? How are the Tieflings doing? If you spared the Night Song, what is she up to? I feel like we're just left with so many questions. Questions that could have been answered by ending slides. As for the companions, I wish we would have gotten an extra scene with them after defeating the Netherbrain. Something similar to the coronation in Dragon Age Origins, or the party at Skyhold in Dragon Age Inquisition after defeating Corypheus. It could be all of us celebrating in a tavern or something. Something similar to the party we have with the Tieflings after we save the Grove. The perfect moments for us to celebrate our victory and talk to our companions one more time so that they can tell us what they plan on doing after this. I did really like the post-credit scene though. Withers casually dissing the Dead 3 was the funniest thing. I also liked the Astarion romance scene I got at the end. While it did feel a little short, it was really cute, and I love that you can promise him to keep traveling together and help him find a way to walk in the sun again. Coming back to Karlach for a bit though, her ending after patch 2 was pretty good. I like that it allows you to go with her to Avernus. It makes sense if you were close friends with her, and especially if you're in a romance with her. And the badass cutscene you get when she arrives in Avernus is cool as fuck. But I still feel like there could have been a little bit more to her story. See, I am almost okay with us not being able to fix her engine. Almost. Her character arc is very tragic, so not being able to fix her engine fits, right? Not all characters can get a happy ending without sacrificing something. Shadowheart either loses her parents or will forever be tormented by Shar, and non-ascended Astarion remains a spawn. Sometimes life just fucks you over, I get it. But for some reason, we do keep finding pieces of infernal iron. I kept collecting them, fully expecting to use them for Karlach at some point, if not fix her, then maybe for some upgrades, but no. There was basically no use for them after Act 2, and I think I finished the game with like 10 of them in my inventory. So, what's the point? Well, apparently there is a Steam thread out there with a list of a whole bunch of content that people data mined, and among the things that people found are full epilogue cutscenes and Withers narrating the epilogues, as well as an ending for Karlach where her engine's been fixed. So, if all of this is true, and keep in mind this is data mined content, the pieces of infernal iron might have had a purpose at some point. Again though, this is data mined content, and there is probably a good reason that these things are not in the full game, whatever that reason might be. Now, I know a lot of other people have had complaints about the endings, and Laren have already responded by adding the extra options for Karlach's ending, and they've said they're going to do this for more characters. They also talked about the cut content discussion that's been going on, and they said the things that were data mined weren't really cut content, but content that they chose not to release because they just didn't think it worked. How much of the data mine content and epilogues will be added to the full version of the game remains to be seen. But I totally trust Laren to address the community's feedback properly, and they have been doing that so far. And who knows, maybe some of the cut content will be reworked and added into the game whenever Baldur's Gate 3 gets a definitive edition later down the line. Bugs. Most of the bugs I encountered were minor. A few visual bugs, helmets being visible on dismissed characters even though I had previously toggled them off, voice dialogue not playing, dialogue options not showing properly, characters not finishing their sentences properly, and a few crashes. Some of the more annoying bugs included placing a custom marker on the map causing the screen to turn black and making you unable to interact with the UI, and a specific bug during the fight with Saravok where every single enemy, including Saravok himself, suddenly stopped attacking and instead just stood still on their turn. Unfortunately, there were also a few bugs that took me out of the immersion. In Act 3, Shadowheart's hand kept hurting as we were walking around the city, even after I had cured her. There is this one line she says about the gods being petty. Yeah, you probably know the one. I got it constantly, even to the point where I started to wonder if that might be the cause of the lack of banter between companions. At the end of the game, during the final cutscene, Mindflayer Orpheus was stuck in his Aspatia Beast form because he was in that form when I defeated the Netherbrain. Now, apparently he's supposed to have dialogue during the final cutscene, but he didn't for me. All I saw was, well, this. Which left me very confused, like I seriously thought he had just died or something because it felt so weird for him not to say anything after defeating a literal netherbrain. Also, Minsk and Jaheira were acting as if my character had turned into a mind flayer while she clearly hadn't, so I wonder if that was related to Orpheus bugging out. Feedback and wishes. I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring up all the feedback that I have, both things that I've already talked about as well as things I haven't mentioned yet. First of all, a preview option for dyeing clothes and armors, please. Right now, the way I check to see if I like a certain color on my armor is by quick saving, dyeing my armor, and reload if I don't like it, because I don't really want to waste my dye or waste my gold on dye remover and buying more dye. My second point of feedback is that I think there should be an option for us to swap companions right before facing the netherbrain. I went into the Orpheus quest with Lae'zel because this quest is very important to her and her people, so I wanted her to be there. I didn't want to take her into the final battle though. After you free Orpheus, you immediately continue to the upper city and confront the netherbrain. And I don't really get why we don't get the opportunity to swap our companions here. There's a perfect setup for it when you enter the Great Hall and find the Fist and all the allies you've gathered there. I was kind of expecting to see my other companions there as well, like, why wouldn't they be there? This would be the perfect place for us to talk to our companions one more time as we prepare for battle and change our active party. The next point is something Lambo brought up regarding the Karlach romance. And that is that your fire resistance if you're a Red Dragonborn is not acknowledged during a specific romance scene with Karlach. During the scene, you have the options to either drink a fire resistance potion or cool Karlach down with water, and there is no reason for a Red Dragonborn that has fire resistance to drink a fire resistance potion. It shouldn't be an issue. The next point was mentioned by my friend Marshall regarding combat, and he said this: I wish there had been more puzzle-like encounters. Towards the end of the game, encounters just become a numbers problem where if you had the bigger ability with the bigger numbers, you would easily be able to win with little to no issue. This isn't necessarily the fault of BG3, as it really stems from 5th edition, where the higher level you get, the more simplified encounters get. It's why most campaigns don't go over level 10. In terms of Baldur's Gate 3, this can be felt in how I, and presumably others, handled encounters in Act 1 versus Act 3. In the early encounters such as the Goblin Camp or the Near Fight, when you have fewer super powerful abilities, you need to strategize and get creative, taking advantage of all available options your character has, as opposed to Act 3 encounters which boil down to this is the best ability I have, so I'm gonna spam it and win. Of course it's not like Larian can't make a high level encounter that is fun and challenging. I'd argue that the Iron Throne is one of the most memorable parts of Act 3, if not the whole game. And what makes that encounter fun is how you really need to think about how best to use your turns. You can't just blindly attack everything, you need to strategize and take advantage of what you have available. Even at this high level, they found a way to make that encounter fun and challenging, especially if you're trying to save everyone. I think the later game would be much more fun if they added more encounters with unique challenges that cause a player to think about and approach combat differently. The rest of my points are mostly things that I've already mentioned in this video. We could use some more reactivity from companions in Act 3, maybe some more dialogue options relating to the main plot as well. We need ending slides to show the state of the world and the impact our choices have throughout the game, and proper closure for companions and origin characters through cutscenes or giving us some sort of final celebration scene where we get to talk to our companions one more time. Apart from my points of feedback, there is one more thing I want to say before I end this video. And this one's just for fun. So if all of the character epilogues and ending slides and stuff get added to the game, I would be totally okay with this being it. Larian have given us an incredible game with a good story and a great cast of characters and tons of replayability. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't want to spend even more time in this world with these characters. So if I could have one selfish wish for this game, it would be that we get a Trespasser or Citadel-like expansion where we get to catch up with companions and go on one more fun, wacky adventure with them. Maybe even expand on the romances a little bit. If you had a romance in the game, it would be fun to see what they've been up to in the meantime, if you ended up staying together. And it'd be great to see how our companions have grown after our time together in the main game, and see what life has been like for them. Again though, this game is already fantastic. And even if we never get a DLC for it, I'd totally be okay with it. I've had such an amazing time playing this game, and I know I'm going to be playing it for years to come. I'm not going to give the game a number or anything, but I can say with confidence that this is one of the best games I have ever played, and it is definitely among my top 3 favorite games of all time. And if the endings get fixed, it might even be my number 1. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, let me know by liking this video, or leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on Baldur's Gate 3. Have you finished the game? What did you think of the endings? Got any favorite moments or more feedback you'd like to share? Let me know. If you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon, or join my Discord server and let's chat about Baldur's Gate 3 some more. That's it for now though, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.